This person is trying to tell me how to build my lats up. What the truth is I wasn't even trying to build my lats up. I'm trying to build the smaller muscles in my back. And due to the nature of how the muscles slope, hi, this is Julien here, personal trainer, PE teacher, and world record holder powerlifter, here to help you be the best you. Now, you see the title at the bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, please, for the love of God, when you turn it around and you're trying to do your research, first of all, first and foremost, before you do your research on whatever it is the discussion or the topic of discussion is, do your research on the person you're talking to. Because here's the deal. I posted a reel on Instagram and back pull down. Now, as a fitness professional with a degree in exercise science, sports medicine, I'm fully aware of the connotations of damaging your rotator cuffs when you are doing particular exercises. But the key caveat is when you're doing any particular exercise, the fact remains is that if you're doing it relatively light, because any weight is relatively light. So I'll give an example. If your maximum lat pull down is say 200 pounds, you should not be doing a behind the back pull down of 200 pounds or even anything within the range of 70 to 80%, 70 to 100% of your maximum lift. So anything between, let's see, 70% would be what, 30% of 200, so you're talking about 60. So you're talking about anywhere between 140 pounds and heavier. If your max pull down was 200 pounds, anything 140 pounds to 200 pounds, you should not be doing a lat pull down behind the back pull down. Because number one, especially if you are not particularly focused on the muscular contractions of the small muscles in your back and shoulder, which is your trapezius, your rhomboids, and your lower traps, right? So the problem is that, so I'm gonna get to the point. I'm gonna get to the initial statement earlier. So here's the deal. So a person turns around and gets on my page and comments and says, hey, you need to do those lat pull downs in front because you're gonna end up in, basically in a situation of injury. And if you want to build your lats, now imagine somebody of that caliber. Now I'll get into that, but somebody of that caliber is telling me how to build my body when I know exactly how to build my body. I've been bigger than I am right now. I've been stronger. I've been faster. I've been all of that stuff. As of right now, I am trying to achieve a new level of fitness. I'm trying to maintain my size while build the definition in my body, which is going to actually cause me to have to change my body composition. So that was the purpose of me demonstrating the things that I was doing in the video, because I was trying to demonstrate the definition in my back. And this person is trying to tell me how to build my lats up. But the truth is I wasn't even trying to build my lats up. I'm trying to build the smaller muscles in my back. And due to the nature of how the muscles slope, each of them slope, your traps slope in an angle like this, and also your lower traps sweep up in an angle like this, and your rhomboids also sweep at an angle like this, all right? So because of that, with full explanation, when you're doing a lat pull down, you are actually now pulling in lat pull down from the rear. You're actually now pulling, and if you emphasize the squeeze in your back, you will actually benefit from it more than you will be detrimental. As a matter of fact, you're strengthening two of your rotator cuff muscles. Your external rotator is the ones that you're improving, which is your infraspinatus and your teres minor. Those two particular muscles are going to get strengthened because in the position you're in, you're already in an externally rotated state, and because you are now specifically contracting those muscles, you are tightening them, therefore creating a higher degree of strength in external rotation, right? But that's beside the point. Here's the other half of the scenario when we're dealing with the rotator cuff. The other two rotators, which is your supraspinatus and your subscapularis, those are your internal rotators. Those two internal rotators are not being affected if your shoulder mobility is good and the weight isn't heavy. And last but not least, there's another factor that it wasn't mentioned in this particular article. I'll show you the feed of the conversation later. But when you are in the article, it stated that your shoulder flexibility has to be fine, and you have to be lifting with a light weight. I already specified to these people beforehand that I'm not specifying my lats and the weight is relatively light. Therefore, I'm in no particular danger for injuring myself. Again, sports medicine, rehabilitation, right? So, your supraspinatus and your subscapularis are internal rotators, but the problem is the main reason why you're primed for injury is when you involve the bicep. The bicep, it actually runs from your radius, runs it from the radius all the way into the upper part of your humerus, which is the short head, and then it runs into your coracoid process, which is a small bone that attaches to your scapula inside here. As a matter of fact, if I push on it, it's about right here. So when you push on it right here, that's where the long head stops, and it runs through a bicipital groove inside of the humerus where it's sheathed by your internal rotators, which is your supraspinatus and your subscapularis, right? Long story short. So by doing that, if I engage my biceps by doing that, I am hyper stretching those internal rotators, and I am also putting more stress on the scapula, because now that short head is being locked in. That short head is locked in, and now what else is left to move? The only thing left to move is the humerus itself. So when the humerus moves, guess where it's moving to? It's getting shortened. So the muscle's getting shortened. That means it's going to push up. So when that humerus push up, because you're pulling in, it's going to pull away from the scapula, which means what? If you're pulling away from the scapula and your internal rotators are already in a stretched position, what then ends up happening is you can tear your rotator cuff muscles, specifically your internal rotators, right? But if the muscles that you're using, if you do not engage your biceps and you specifically focus on the contraction of your scapulas, therefore the scapulae, I should say, if you actually are focused on those particular things, you are not at risk for injury at all, especially if the weight is light relative to your strength level. All right, like I said, anything 60% and below is actually legit in that exercise. Now, on to the rest of the story. This individual tries to correct me by showing me that they Googled, right? And the fact is look, Google is a useful tool. I get a lot of information from Google. I get a lot of refreshers from Google because I know what I'm looking for. But as an educated person, as a person who has been doing this now for over 15 years in terms of professional, and for somebody that has been working out for over 33 years, I think I know what I'm doing. Now, I am humble enough to know where to take advice, and when somebody who speaks to me, I am humble enough to listen to people who have done things in their life to achieve things that I may not have and that I'm seeking to achieve. So for instance, I'll give you an example. If Arnold Schwarzenegger came and told me I shouldn't do that exercise ever, I'd ask him why. And he'll probably tell me, he'll give me his explanation. I don't know what his explanation would be, but he might even say that he tore his rotator cuff because he got a little too aggressive and he tore his rotator cuff. He might be right. You know what? I will take heed to it, but I would also ask him then I'm sure that within that criticism, he would give me sage advice because he knows what I am actually trying to work. So he'll turn around and say, hey, if you want to work those traps, I understand, you can do arm shrugs, but I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to develop a specific look with your traps. So, okay, fine. But here's the deal. You could do these exercises here. That's another alternative, by the way, mind you. You can take weights and actually go into a upward motion while performing the squeeze here. And as you do that, you're still doing the exercise. Ironically, you are still putting your arms behind your head. Now, the other half of it is I turn around and I try to explain to the person that yes, I can turn around and get a forward neck and all this other stuff. Trust me, I am well versed in kinesiology, well versed in biomechanics, well versed, all right? I understand that, but if you know the exercises that counteract those muscles, to strengthen those muscles behind the back of your neck, strengthen those muscles there, you won't get, if you do the Y, T, W, Ls, your chances of actually having that forward neck actually diminishes further because you are strengthening all the muscles behind the neck to retract it so that you could avoid kyphosis, which is hunchback, right? You're trying to avoid kyphosis. Here's a news flash. Number one, I have arthritis in my spine already through no injury in the gym. Ever. It is through carrying heavy weight while rucking and carrying heavy weight as a youth, right? I injured my shoulder. My rotator cuff is already compromised playing football, all right? As a matter of fact, when I do these behind the back pull downs, when I do these behind the back pull downs, I actually get relief from the pain of my rotator cuff because I actually pulled my external rotators and one of my internal rotators, all right? So considering all of that, I know what I'm doing. And you turning around and pulling up, or anyone pulling up a Google search is hilarious because number one, the Google search that they pulled up was over the behind the back shoulder presses. I am not pressing over my head, I'm pulling down towards my shoulders, all right? That was number one. So then his buddy got into it with me and turned around, and then he pulled up the livestrong.com. I'll show you a picture of that too. The livestrong.com article where why trainers say not to do this exercise. Fine, that's all well and good. Again, trainers suggest the average person to not do these exercises. Without supervision, without clear instruction, and without experience, you should not be doing behind the back pull downs because chances are you're going to go in there and ego lift and therefore cause exactly the damage that I described earlier if you do it improperly. Because again, you're gonna focus on pulling with the arms while I am focusing on squeezing my scapula together. And that is all that I'm doing, right? So between those things, that is why a lot of trainers advise not to do that exercise. The worst part of it all is that he didn't bother to read the article inside because the article then went on to stress that as long as the weight is light and as long as there's shoulder mobility, and you're moving with the right mechanics, you will not hurt yourself. But because of the fact that the average person is not well versed in this type of stuff, we don't advise you to do that stuff, and we don't just give you that exercise to do because most of the time we're trying to build your lats. And again, in the comments, I turned around and I told the person, if I were building my lats, you were absolutely right. I would not do that exercise if I was building my lats. But I'm not working on my lats. I'm working on something else. The contractions in my back should give you a clue as to what I'm actually working on. So the thing is, you're not an expert simply because you could Google something. You're not an expert because you listened to an expert. You are an expert when you have done the deep-seated readings and studyings and connections and all of this other stuff that me and other people like me have done for decades, all right? This is where the rubber meets the road. And when I turn around and I say, you went to Google, I went to college, he tried to insult me and say, well, I wasted my money, when the comedy of it all is, he's absolutely 100% wrong. I showed this to trainer buddies of mine and we all had a good chuckle. The fact of the matter is that stay in your lane. I've been doing this way longer than some of you have been alive, all right? Not only that, if you're going to comment on it, if you're going to turn around and say something, please be humble enough to understand that you're not talking to some young dude who's doing this for the first time. I am 45 years old. I've been working out since I was 12. I am stronger than, at this moment, I'm stronger than most 45-year-old men at the weight of 148 pounds, all right? The thing is, I want y'all to get out of the way of thinking that the research you're doing is sufficient enough to try to prove somebody wrong, when the fact remains is that you are not even bothering to read the articles of where you're getting your research from. Because if you did, you'll get more details, and therefore you can turn around and gain some more understanding, and maybe, just maybe, it might help you be the best you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. Humble yourself and be the best you.